Hello everyone. In this video, I will talk about a Chapter 7 assignment. So that's going to be a problem 7.2, which is the second question in this assignment. In this question, we have three options for production. So general purpose equipment, which is the GPE, flexible manufacturing system, FMS, and dedicated machine, the DM. The three options have different fixed cost and also the per unit variable cost. So our job is to find when the GPE has the lowest cost, when the FMS has the lowest cost, and when the DM has the lowest cost. In other words, we need to find the break-even points for those three options. Okay, so let's work on it. So I copied all those numbers into the Excel. So we got the same numbers in this Excel. So we need to for each option, we need to calculate the total annual cost. So we know the total annual cost is equal to the annual fixed cost plus the contracted volume times the variable cost. So in this equation, in this annual cost, we have two cost items. The first one is fixed cost. The other one is the variable cost times the contracted volume. We need to calculate when this one is better than this one, or which is the break-even point. So let's compare the GPE and FMS first. If we just look at those numbers, the fixed cost and variable cost, we know that GPE has a lower fixed cost, and FMS has a higher fixed cost. That means if our production volume or the contracted volume is relatively small, it will be better to use the GPE because it has a lower fixed cost. So fixed cost is the money we have to spend even if we only produce one unit of product. Okay? So if your volume is relatively small, you'd better choose the option with a lower fixed cost. So let's calculate when those options have the same annual cost. So let's do this equation. Okay. So in this equation, the left-hand side is the annual cost for the first option, which is the GPE. Okay. So it is the fixed cost plus the contracted volume because we want to find a volume that makes the two annual costs the same. So we leave this as an unknown variable. So contracted value times the variable cost, okay, equals on the right hand side is the annual cost for the second option, which is the flexible manufacturing system. So the first term is the fixed cost. I get this from there, plus the contracted volume times the variable cost. So when those two options give us the same cost, we have this equation. So our job is to solve this equation, and then we will have this contracted volume. Okay? So if we do the math, so we will have the result. So this is our break-even point. So that means when the contracted volume is less than this amount, it's going to be better to use the first option because it has a lower fixed cost. But if the volume is greater than this value, it's better to use the second option, which is the FMS, because the second option has a lower variable cost. Okay, so that's the break-even point between for the first two options. Okay, what about the second one and the third one? So let's do the same. So when those two options have the same annual cost, the two annual cost items should be equal for those two options. So the first one is annual cost for the flexible manufacturing system. That is the fixed cost plus the contracted value times the variable cost. On the right-hand side of the equation, that's the fixed cost of the third option, the dedicated machine, and plus the contracted volume times the variable cost. And if we solve the equation, we will have the break-even point in terms of the contracted volume. So that means if the volume is less than this amount, it's going to be better to use the FMS. And if the volume is greater than this volume, it's going to be better to use the DM because it has a lower variable cost. So if we look at this figure, let's visualize this result. Okay, so we have three lines here. Okay. The red one is for the GPE, the GPE, and the green one is for the FMS, which is the second option. The third option is a dedicated machine. So if the volume is below this point, if you can see among those three lines, the red one has the lowest cost. That means if the volume is below this point, it's better to use the GPE. But if the volume continues to increase, so which one has the lowest cost? The FMS, the green one, is the lowest. Okay? So it should be between those two numbers that we calculated. So if the volume is between those two numbers, it's going to be better to use the green one, which is the second option, the flexible manufacturing system. But if we continue to increase the volume, contracted volume, it's going to be better to use the third option, the dedicated machine, because if the volume is above this point, the DM, the third option, has the lowest cost. So that's how we find the break-even points.